Well, I haven't made a whole lot of progress on the airplane project for a while. I did manage to get the flap handle welded up and fixed, and I got the filler neck made up for the belly tank, but it's been a couple weeks since I really made any progress other than that. I had to take a wife down to Seattle for some medical doctor visit, and that took a couple weeks. By the time you get down there and see the doctor for the initial consultation, and then you have to wait for a week for whatever for the surgery she had. And anyway, we lost a couple weeks there, and then since I've been back, it's been snowing, and I've just been taking care of snow every day. It's either shoveling the roof off the hangar or plowing the driveway out and opening it up, and once I get it opened up one day, and then the next day I've got to go take the bucket on the bobcat and haul the snow out over the bank to get rid of it, and then the next day it's plow snow again, and it's just one thing after another on that. So anyway, we haven't made much progress. We're finally getting a break in the weather here, and it warmed up, and I broke the ice up yesterday in the driveway and got it fairly well cleaned up, and it looks like it's going to be freezing for the next few days, so no more snow. Anyway, the next project I want to work on is not something that's going to further the finish of the airplane, the finishing it up, but it's something I need to do, and I want to do it before I put the fabric covering on there. Got the airplane sitting now on this rotisserie, and I can move it around in here, and it makes it handy to work on, and I can roll it and whatnot and get it in different positions to work on it. But once I get the fabric on, I want to be able to move the airplane out of here and down to the hangar where we can put the engine on and the wings and things like that. And I don't really want to, packing it in here with a couple of guys was fine when it was just a bare fuselage, but it's getting heavier. And once I get the engine or the fabric on there, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take a chance of screwing the fabric up or anything. So I want to make a set of dollies for it to move it around on. I'm not going to put them on them right now, but I'll have it to move once I get it moved. And then once we get it down to the hangar, when we get ready we'll put the engine on and stuff like that, we'll need something to put the airplane on until I get the floats ready to put under it. So this is what I've got. I've got some 1-inch box tubing here, and I'm going to cut this out and make a little framework, a little carriage or landing gear. And then I've got these little wheels here. These are push bike wheels. Strider, they call them, bike wheels. They're little bicycle for little kids that don't have pedals on them. They just kind of push them around with their feet. I got these off of eBay. Saw them some places on there were $50 a piece, and other places were more, and I think I got them for $10 or $11 a piece. And they'll work good enough for what I need for moving that airplane. They're solid wheels. They don't have any air in them. They're not going to collapse. They're just plastic, so they're not going to be for taking off and landing or anything like that. Now this is the landing gear attach fitting here, forward landing gear attach fitting, and this is the rear landing gear attach fitting. And the normal landing gear comes down at an angle, and the wheels are right down here. Well, I'm kind of going to do that, I guess. But what I'm going to do is just take that angle or that box tubing and cut a section of it flat, and then bend it here so it can come down, and then I'll take it here, and I'm just going to bolt it on with one bolt and figure out a way to mount those wheels on there. And I'll probably have to run a stringer across the bottom to keep the wheels from collapsing outwards or inwards, whatever direction they decide they want to go, but to hold it rigid. And then I'll have to figure out something to do for the tail. So I guess the first thing I'll do is figure out how long I want my gear to be, how long far off the ground it's going to be. Well, I'll cut these pieces up into lengths. I got to make the left side and the right side pretty close to the same. And I'll take an end down here like this and just cut this out, and the one will go straight down, but I'll just drill it out for a bolt to go through there to hook onto that pad eye. The one I'll probably have to bend it, but we'll figure that out as it goes. That's kind of the way I do everything, is figure it out as I go. This is going to be my main leg, the first leg that comes down from the front landing gear pad. And what I've done here, this is where it's going to mount to the front landing gear pad. What I've done is box tubing, took a hacksaw and cut back 1 inch on both sides, and left an ear sticking out here. Then I cut back 2 inches on the other side and trimmed out the 45-degree angle. I used the hacksaw for the main cuts and the Dremel tool for those 45s. And I'll go ahead and squeeze this together. I'll go ahead and form this down and bring these two pieces together, and I think I'll probably weld them up and then drill a hole in here for a bolt to fit that pad eye, that landing gear pad, and that'll be my attach to that. I thought maybe I was going to have to take these down to the shop and use the torch on them to heat them up to bend them, but I just put the little anvil down here on the floor. I don't want to beat on this table, and I'm running my 3D printer over on my main workbench. I didn't want to bang on it while it was running, so anyway, I just got that and bent that down and closed it up there. I used a cant twist clamp to use my brand new cant twist clamp. It's a 1 inch one I just got, and I'll go ahead and weld this seam closed on both of these and then trim this off. Now, of course, because of the geometry of the bend here, this one leg is shorter than the other leg where it comes together, but that's still plenty of pad right there for fitting on that landing gear pad mount. That can fit up just like that with this backside against it. Actually, it doesn't make any difference which side goes against it. It's still going to be plenty strong enough for what I need. Well, now I get to try out my new welding table for what it was meant for. It's not a very sturdy makeup table. It rocked around a little bit doing that hacksawing of those parts. It was not exactly sturdy enough for that, although it worked. But now I got that pieces, both of them. I polished up the edge where the weld's going to be, where they come together. Got it clamped down to the table and have my ground clamped on the end of it there. I polished up the end and I put the ground right on the piece. Oh, I've got my welder turned on and set up, and we'll go ahead and see what we can do about welding that. Well, I got the first one welded up. I might turn it over and weld those two tabs together, but it doesn't really make any difference whether I do or not. And this is not going to be out in the weather or anything, so I don't have to worry about water getting down in there and contaminate it and rusting or anything. Pretty happy with the way my welds went this time. Watching the videos, and I can see what I was doing wrong. I'm not hitting it hot enough, fast enough, and not moving fast enough, and I got it moving pretty good this time, and I didn't get it near as hot. I didn't blow through any of that. That's thin metal. That's still, I don't know, 3/32 or so the thickness of that wall, and there's rust on it and stuff. I didn't blow through it or anything, and it all turned out pretty good. Got that one done. I'll do the other one, and that portion will be pretty much done. I'll have to shape these, round these over, radius this and everything, and drill the holes. So thinking about the welds and stuff a little bit, and watching the videos again, realizing what I did wrong and kind of letting it dwell a little bit. I did a whole lot better on my welding here on these. Got my puddle formed a little faster and got my speed moving along, and these weren't exactly the easiest welds because they're edge welds on thin material, especially along here, and I was real happy the way they turned out. Not perfect, and I got my tungsten stuck and then jabbed it a little bit with a filler rod and had to grind it a couple times, but it's still a lot better than what I've been doing, and just little quick welds there. So anyway, I got those welded up. Then I took them down to the hangar where I've got the big disc and belt sander, and I put them on the disc sander and rounded these ends over here and smoothed them out and radius this top. Took them into the shop into the drill press, and I drilled out a 21/64 hole in both of these. That'll be a clearance hole for a 5/16 bolt. So I've got to run to town and get some 5/16 inch bolts. I don't have any in my inventory, and I don't really want to use a number 5 AN bolt on those. I've got that leg bolted up there onto that pad. I'm getting ready to do something for the one from the rear attach point. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run from diagonally from the rear attach point down to that front leg down there. What I did here is this is a leftover piece that I cut those 2 front legs out of, and it's enough to give me 1 back leg. And I measured back 2 inches, I measured back 3 inches, and then I measured back 2 inches. So I'm going to cut this out 2 inches and then cut out the one side so I can cut out a diagonal there. So my ear here is going to be say 1 3/4 inches or whatever that's going to turn out to be with that the loss that we make going on that diagonal. But anyway, that'll give me a longer ear there, and I'll do the same thing I did with the front one. I'll go ahead and bend that down that 45 and then up here and weld that so I've got a long tongue on that, and then I can bend that tongue as I need to from that rear attach fitting towards the front leg. Okay, that one looks just like the other 2 did, except it's got a longer tongue on it here. It's already got a little bit of a bend in it, but I don't care about that because I'm going to bend it even more in that junction right there. That tongue is going to bend probably close to 45 degrees or so. So I'll go ahead and see if I can weld that one up. Then I can measure it up for length and do another one for the other side. Well, I got the angle in the rear strut there, the rear leg, and I got that, took it down to the disc sander, sanded it off, and drilled a 21/64 hole in it, or 21/32, whatever the hell, 21/32. Anyway, I got it bolted up there now to the landing gear, and I've got it down and hooked into the front leg, and I got it angled just right by accident, and so I've got it all clamped together now. I'll spot that on there in a couple of spots. I guess I'll take it off and weld it up on the bench. Yeah, I got that all welded up, the junction there between those 2. Now I need to figure out how I'm going to mount this tire on there, and I think what I'm going to do is cut a piece of 1/8 inch. I bought some 1/8 inch strap at the store, but I don't think it's as wide as what I want. I think I've got some 1/8 inch material around. I'll go dig it out. It's pretty rusty, but I'll dig it out and just make a gusset in here, and then drill a hole in it to fit these screws on there, and that should mount that wheel on there. Alright, I found some material that's going to work for this. Not exactly the same shape, but pretty darn close. And if I lap those over, that'll be fine. Weld that on. This is the cut-offs, the angle iron that I used to make the framework for the powder coat oven. And this is just the ends of it when I made the 45s. I've got both legs for my roll-around gear welded up. This is the one for the left-hand side. The one for the right-hand side is over on the airplane. I've got the gusset welded on. So these are pretty much done. I need to drill a hole out here for the axle for the wheels. Then I need to do something to keep them from spreading. I've got some 3/4 inch square tubing that I thought about welding on a little plug, or a length of that, about a 3-inch length of that, onto these legs here, and then this 1-inch tubing that I used here for this legs would slip over that, and I could just pin it in there. That way I could take it on and off. But getting the geometry right for that to slide back and forth without any problem with the legs at different angles and stuff like that can create a little bit of problem sometimes. So I'm thinking I've got some angle iron. I have to go look and see what I've got. I might just do the same thing, put a little stub of angle iron here and weld on these upper leg, these straight legs, and drill a hole in it, and then use another length of angle iron to go between them and just pin them together once you get it all on and everything. That way it can all come off and break down into a small size. It doesn't have to be a fixed trolley or anything like that. Made a little bit of a mistake on the right gear there, the gusset. When I put it on, I got the orientation of it off, and I don't know how I did that, because I checked that thing 3 or 4 times before I welded it down, and on the bench it looked like it was right, but once I put it up there I could see that I had it wrong. Oh, anyway, it doesn't really affect anything. It's just looks like hell, but it'll still work the way it is. So when I did this left side, I made sure and got it on there right. Now, I made another mistake on this when I did this. This is the first piece that I cut from this diagonal leg, and I took the dimensions off of this left-hand side, and I got the angle, the right-hand side that I completed, and so I cut the angle for it, and then measured out the length, and set it up for my little tongue. Well, I took it down to the shop to cut it there on the vise instead of cutting it here, where I get a little more stability, and I wound up cutting the stupid tongue on the wrong orientation on that square. Well, I think I made a misstatement on my material here. This is 1-inch square tubing, box tubing, and I think I said it was 3/32 thickness, and I may have even said it was 3/16, but that was way out of line. But I got to checking, and it's 16 gauge or 1/16 wall thickness. And this gusset, it was a piece cut off of a piece of angle iron that I used, and it was a piece of scrap that I got from the high school gym bleachers when they tore those apart, and it's what I used on framework. I used it on framework for several different things here, including the powder coating oven frame, and this was a cut off piece from that, from the angle iron from it. And I don't remember what I think I said, that was 3/8 or something like that, but it's 3/16. Here's my main landing gear carrier, whatever you want to call it, with a hole drilled in there for the axle nut, or the axle bolt on the wheel. So I got this little stub welded on there. Got a couple holes in it. Just a piece of, I don't know what that is, 3/4 inch angle iron. I can just take another piece of angle iron and put a couple of 3/16 bolts in there, one on each end, to hold that from spreading. Well, here's the trolley gear, landing gear, whatever you want to call it. Little carriage mounted up on there. I just got it loosely mounted for now. There's the little wheel. I was afraid that was going to be cantilevered out too much and not have enough support on it without another leg coming out on this side. But I think it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. It only has to hold up a couple 100 pounds. I'm going to take this down now, sandblast it, and paint it. I'd say about powder coating it, but it doesn't need to be powder coated. I'll just paint it with some Exo Rust. The bogie wheels are all assembled. I've got them mounted up on the airframe right now. I'll call them bogie wheels. That's as good a name as any, instead of searching for different names for them that I was trying to do, since they're not real landing gear. And bogie wheels fit. Could have called them beaching gear too. That's what they call a gear that they put underneath the floats of an airplane when they, a straight floated airplane, when they're pulling it out on the ground, on the hard. And they have wheels that fit in there that they pull them out on. But since this is not on floats, it's just wheels, we'll just call it bogie gear. Anyway, those are on there and bolted up. And I needed a cross brace to cross piece to keep them from spreading out on me when we put the weight down on them. And so I've got this piece of angle iron, and this is just the piece that I cut the stubs off of. I cut 3-inch stubs and welded them onto each one of the legs there, the left one and the right one, and drilled a 3/16 inch hole in it for a pin, for a bolt. And so this is part of what was left over of that. Cut it 28.5 inches and drilled, marked the holes in it to fit the holes in the stubs, and I fit it up and dropped a couple of 3/16 inch, actually number 10 1032 screws in there through the holes. And since to keep them from getting lost in hunting for screws, I just went ahead and brought this out and put it on the table here and tacked those screws in the holes. So they're in there permanent. We don't have to worry about hunting for them whenever we need to put this together. There's the bogie gear all painted up and together. I got to thinking, and somewhere in my pile of stuff I've probably got some Cessna axles. I'm pretty sure that I do. Some Cessna bolt-on axles, and I've got some tires with Cleveland wheels on them, and I could have bolted those on here on this and put regular aircraft wheels on there, and it would have been stronger. But the wheels, the tires would have stuck out about this far, and the advantages of these is they're down pretty much flush with the sides of the airplane, the airframe, so they're not going to be in the way too much. If a guy's working around in this airplane and stuff, you're not going to have to stumble around those wheels sticking out of there. And I can always take these wheels off and then just set it down on those stubs too, and that way it'd be pretty firm down on the ground. I was pretty happy with the way my bogie wheels turned out. I think they were going to work out just fine, but after watching them a little bit, I just got to worrying about maybe they would rack over one side or the other when I put pressure on them. Well, I had this piece of 1-inch tubing that I had originally cut for one of the diagonal legs, the main legs on the bogie wheels to go down, and I screwed up and cut the angle on the one end wrong. Well, I decided I would go ahead and use it for a diagonal. This is the original pad that I made on here to go on that rear landing gear fitting, and it had been square here. I went ahead and just cut another angle there and welded that up for a pad. I can bolt that in on the landing gear attached fitting, and then I'll run this down on that my diagonal brace and drill a hole in it. I've got it drilled for a number 10 screw, so I can drill a hole in that diagonal brace, and that'll guarantee that it's not going to rack on me or anything. And there's no point in taking a chance and not having that thing collapse after we get all this effort and stuff in it once I get the fabric on it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put it up there and measure it up now and mark where the hole goes in the cross brace, the cross piece. There's the new and improved bogie gear. Even without everything tightened down, I just have a screw in that point there where it's going to mate up this diagonal. Yeah, I've got it fairly tight into this pad eye here for the landing gear, but even with everything still loose, nothing tightened up, it doesn't want to move very much. I mean, it flexes the screws, but that's about it. So that's going to work out a lot better. I'm going to feel a lot better about that when we start trying to move this thing around, that this gear is not going to collapse on me and go cattywampus.